My name is Brittany. I am 32 years old, and if you were to look at my life over the last year, you'd see it was defined by a very specific kind of love. It's the kind of love that sits on your lap at 6 a.m. and demands a thorough brushing. My cat, Buster, a big, beautiful, buff-colored tabby, is my shadow. He doesn't just like being brushed, he craves it, leaning his weight into the bristles until he's practically purring his soul out. For the longest time, people told me that this connection was just biological, that animals were just temporary fixtures in a human world. I wanted to believe they were wrong, but I never had proof. Not until 9 days ago. The spring rain was coming down in sheets that afternoon. I was driving home, thinking about Buster waiting by the door, when my tires hit a patch of standing water. The world spun. There was the screech of metal, a jarring impact, and then a silence so heavy it felt like it had physical weight. I didn't feel the pain of the steering column or the cold rain. Instead, I felt myself being lifted out of the wreckage. I wasn't in the driver's seat anymore. I was standing in a place where the air felt like silk against my skin. The transition was seamless, like walking from a dark, noisy room into a garden at dawn. I looked down at my hands and saw that they were glowing with a soft inner light. The gray, rain-slicked highway was gone, replaced by a field of grass that shimmered with shades of emerald and gold. I felt a lightness in my chest, a total absence of the anxiety that had shadowed my 32 years. For the first time, I wasn't worried about the future or mourning the past. I was just present. I turned around, and there he was. I didn't have to guess. My soul knew him before my mind could find the name. He didn't look like a distant king on a throne. He looked like the very definition of home. His hair was dark and wavy, falling past his shoulders, and his skin had a warmth to it, a bronze glow that seemed to radiate light from within. But it was his eyes that stopped me. They were the color of deep amber, like sunlight trapped in honey, filled with a kindness so intense it felt like a physical embrace. I stood there for what felt like a heartbeat and an eternity all at once. The air around him didn't just carry a scent, it carried a feeling. It smelled like the first breath of spring after a long, hard winter, crisp, clean, and full of a growing life that never fades. I realized then that every beautiful thing I had ever seen on earth, the way the sun hits the dew in the morning, the deep peace of a forest at dusk, was just a faint reflection of the light coming from him. I tried to speak, but my voice felt small in the presence of such immense love. Am I really here? I managed to whisper. My voice didn't sound like it did back on the highway. It sounded clearer, like a bell ringing in a quiet room. He didn't move his lips to answer at first, yet I heard his voice inside my heart, steady and warm. You are safe, Brittany. You are where you were always meant to be. He stepped closer, and as he did, the grass beneath his feet seemed to glow brighter, as if even the ground was happy to feel his touch. He reached out his hand, and though I felt small, I didn't feel afraid. I felt like a child who had finally found her father in a crowded room. The questions I had carried for years began to bubble up. I thought of Buster. I thought of how his little heart beat against my side when I was sad. I thought of all the times people told me that my love for him was misplaced, that I should focus only on human things, because animals were just biological machines without a spark of the eternal. They told me it wasn't real, I said, my voice shaking. They told me that when they die, they just stop, that the love I felt was just a trick of my own mind. Jesus looked at me, and his amber eyes seemed to hold the history of every living thing. He didn't look at me with judgment. He looked at me with a profound understanding that made my breath catch. He gestured toward the horizon, where the gold of the field met a sky the color of a soft violet pearl. Come and see, he said. The world around us didn't just change. It opened up. It was like I was seeing the world through a lens that had finally been cleaned. We weren't standing in the field anymore, though I could still feel the warmth of his hand near mine. We were standing in a place of pure, blinding light, right at the moment of the world's first morning. I watched as the light divided into colors I didn't have names for. I saw the breath of God, that shimmering, golden mist, move across the waters and the hills. But it wasn't just a general cloud of life. I saw him, the man standing next to me, kneeling in the soft soil of a new world. He wasn't just making things, he was pouring himself into them. I saw him shape the first of the great cats. I watched as he traced the line of a leopard's shoulder and the curve of a domestic cat's ear. When he breathed into them, I didn't see a mechanical engine start. I saw a tiny, brilliant spark of that golden mist settle deep within their chests. It wasn't a temporary gift. It was a piece of the divine breath, a tether that tied them to him forever. The breath I gave them is the same breath that sustains the stars, he told me. His voice was like a low, beautiful song. I did not make them to be scenery for a human play. I made them to be companions of the soul. Each one is a unique thought of my Father, brought into being to show a different side of his joy. He showed me a vision of a deep, dark forest on earth. It was a place no human had ever stepped. I saw a mother bear waking up from her sleep, her cubs tumbling over her in the dim light. I could feel her pride and her fierce protective love. It wasn't an instinct born of survival alone. It was a reflection of the Creator's own protectiveness over his children. I saw the golden spark inside her glow brighter as she nuzzled her young. They praise me in their existence, he whispered. The hawk that circles the mountain, the whale that sings in the deep, they do not need words to worship. Their very life is a prayer of gratitude. When a cat purrs in content, it is a sound that echoes in the halls of heaven. Then the vision shifted. We were in a small, dusty village. I saw a donkey, old and tired, carrying a heavy load of water jars up a steep hill. Its legs were shaking, and its head hung low. My heart ached for it. I wanted to reach out and take the weight off its back. Look closer, Jesus said. I looked, and I saw a shimmering light surrounding the animal. There was an angel walking beside the donkey, unseen by the villagers, leaning down to whisper strength into its ears. The donkey wasn't alone. It was being held up by a love that the world couldn't see. No creature suffers in silence, he told me, his voice turning solemn. I am the witness to every heavy load. I am the one who feels the sting of the whip and the ache of the hunger. Their lives are not cheap in my sight. Not a single sparrow falls without my heart feeling the impact. This realization hit me like a wave. I thought of all the stray cats I had seen on the streets, the ones I couldn't save. I thought of the animals in shelters, waiting for a home that never came. I felt a surge of grief, but he touched my shoulder, and the grief didn't crush me. It turned into a deep, peaceful understanding. I gather them all, he said. Every life that was cut short, every heart that was broken by neglect, they find their way to me. There is a place here for every one of them, where the fear is wiped away and the memory of pain is replaced by the warmth of my light. He then showed me a vision that was so simple it made me cry. It was a young boy, maybe 5 years old, sitting on a porch. He was crying because he had scraped his knee. A small, scruffy dog with one floppy ear trotted over to him. The dog didn't say anything, of course, but it sat down and rested its head on the boy's lap, looking up with eyes full of a strange, ancient wisdom. I saw the light passing between them. It was like a bridge made of silver thread. The boy's crying slowed, and he reached out to bury his hands in the dog's fur. In that moment, the dog wasn't just a pet. It was a healer. It was absorbing the boy's distress and offering back a steady, unwavering peace. This is the mystery people forget, Jesus said. I sent these creatures to be a bridge. When humans became hard of heart and forgot how to love purely, I left the animals among them to show them the way back. They love without condition. They do not hold on to the past or worry about the tomorrow. They are the keepers of the present moment, which is where I always reside. We walked further into the mist, and I felt the ground beneath me change. It felt like walking on a cloud that was firm enough to hold my weight, but soft enough to cushion every step. The colors around us were becoming even more vivid. I saw flowers that hummed with a low, musical vibration, and trees whose leaves looked like they were made of living emeralds. I saw a golden retriever running through a meadow of these singing flowers. He was young and strong, his coat shining like polished brass. He was chasing a ball that seemed to be made of pure light. When he caught it, he turned and ran toward a figure sitting under a tree. It was a man I didn't recognize, but I could see the joy on his face. They were playing, truly playing, in a way that had no end and no tiredness. That is Thomas, Jesus said, watching them with a smile. On earth he was blind. He never saw the face of his guide dog, though he knew the touch of his fur and the sound of his breath. Here, his eyes are open, and the first thing he saw was the friend who had led him through the darkness for 12 years. Do you think I would deny them this reunion? Do you think the love they built in the shadows would be lost in the light? I shook my head, my heart feeling so full it felt like it might burst. The idea that these bonds were temporary felt like a lie that had finally been burned away by the truth. But what about the ones who were never loved, I asked? The ones who lived and died in the wild, or the ones who were treated poorly? Do they have a place here too? Jesus stopped walking and turned to me. The amber in his eyes seemed to glow with a deeper fire. He didn't speak immediately, but he allowed a vision to form in the air between us. I saw a vast, beautiful plain. It was filled with animals of every kind: lions, lambs, wolves, and deer. They weren't hunting each other. They were resting together in a peace so profound it was almost tangible. I saw an old, mangy cat that had died in an alleyway, alone and cold. In the vision, he was no longer mangy. His fur was thick and soft, the color of moonlight. He was being cradled by a woman with a face of pure kindness, an angel whose job it was to welcome the unwanted. "The first shall be last, and the last shall be first," Jesus said softly. "The ones the world threw away are the ones I hold closest. In my house, there are no strays. Every creature has a name known to me. Every life has a purpose, even if it was only to be a small spark of beauty in a dark corner of the world." I watched as the cat purred, a sound that seemed to harmonize with the music of the flowers. The angel kissed the top of its head, and the cat closed its eyes, finally knowing what it felt like to be cherished. "The love you feel for Buster," Jesus continued, "is not a mistake. It is a reflection of the love I have for you. I put that capacity for connection inside you, so you could understand a part of my heart. When you care for him, you are participating in a holy work. You are being my hands. You are showing him a glimpse of the heaven that awaits him." I thought of Buster's morning routine, the way he would wait for the brush, the way he would lean into me. I realized that those moments weren't just cute. They were sacred. They were small rehearsals for the great love that exists here in this place. The golden light around us seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own. It wasn't a static place. It was a living, breathing environment that responded to the love radiating from him. Jesus began to walk again, and I found my feet moving effortlessly beside him. Every step felt like I was walking on a floor of diamonds that were soft as moss. I looked out over a horizon that never ended, seeing colors that I knew existed back home only in the deepest parts of a sunset or the center of a rare jewel. "There is so much more I want you to understand, Brittany," he said. He paused by a stream that ran with water so clear it looked like liquid light. The water didn't just flow, it sang. It was a low, humming melody that sounded like 1,000 voices in perfect harmony. He gestured toward the water, and as I looked, the surface became like a mirror, showing me a different time and place. I saw a vast, open ocean. The waves were massive, crashing against jagged cliffs with a power that would normally be terrifying. But in the vision, I could see beneath the surface. I saw a pod of whales moving through the deep blue. They were massive, ancient-looking beings. I could see the golden spark within each of them, pulsing in time with their deep, booming songs. "Watch them," he whispered. I saw one of the younger whales get separated from the group during a fierce underwater current. It was small and looked frightened, its movements frantic. But then I saw a light, the same pearlescent light that came from the marks on Jesus' wrists, descend through the water. It wrapped around the young whale like a warm blanket. The whale's movement slowed. It wasn't afraid anymore. I watched as the light guided it, nudge by nudge, back to the safety of its mother. "Even in the depths where no human eye can see, I am there," Jesus said. "I am the compass for the lost. I am the warmth in the cold current. These great creatures carry a wisdom that humans have forgotten. They remember the sound of my voice from the first day of creation. They move in obedience to the rhythms I set in motion before the world began." The vision in the water shifted. Now I saw a tiny hummingbird, its wings moving so fast they were just a blur. It was fighting against a heavy summer storm, trying to reach a flower for nectar. It looked so fragile, like a single drop of rain could crush it. I felt a surge of worry for the little bird. But then I saw him. In the vision, Jesus was there, though the bird couldn't see him with its physical eyes. He was cupping his hands around the tiny creature, creating a pocket of still air in the middle of the howling wind. The bird found its footing on the stem of the flower and drank deeply. "Their fragility is their strength," he said, turning his gaze from the water to me. "The world thinks the small are unimportant, but in my kingdom, the smallest sparrow is a masterpiece of design. I know the count of every feather. I know the rhythm of every tiny heart. When they struggle, I am their shelter. I do not just watch them from a distance. I am with them in the wind and the rain." We left the stream and began to climb a gentle hill covered in wildflowers that smelled like honey and cedar. As we reached the top, the view opened up into a valley filled with trees that looked like they were made of silver and gold. I saw movement among the trees, thousands of animals, more than I could count. I saw a lion walking calmly beside a group of gazelles. On Earth, this would have been a scene of terror, but here, there was only peace. The lion's mane was like spun gold, and its eyes were soft and clear. A small child, no more than 3 or 4 years old, was buried in the lion's thick fur, sleeping soundly. "The restoration of all things," Jesus said softly. "The fear that entered the world is gone here. The hunger that drove one to hunt the other has been satisfied by my presence. They are finally what they were always intended to be, vessels of peace." I noticed a group of dogs nearby, all of different breeds and sizes. They were playing a game that looked like tag, running with a speed and grace that felt supernatural. One of them, a black lab with a white patch on its chest, suddenly stopped and looked toward us. It barked once, a joyful musical sound, and ran toward Jesus. He knelt down, and I watched as the great creator of the universe let the dog lick his face and jump against his chest. He laughed, and the sound was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. It was the sound of pure, uncomplicated joy. "This is Barnaby," Jesus said, scratching the dog behind the ears exactly where he liked it. On Earth, Barnaby lived his whole life on a short chain in a muddy backyard. He never knew a kind word. He never knew the feeling of grass beneath his paws or the thrill of a run. He died alone in the cold. My heart broke for Barnaby, but as I looked at the dog now, I saw no trace of that past. His eyes were bright, his body was strong, and his spirit was overflowing with love. The moment he left that body, Jesus continued, I was the first thing he saw. I broke that chain forever. Here, he is a prince. He spends his days exploring the mountains and playing with the children who arrive here feeling lost. He is no longer defined by the cruelty of man. He is defined by my love for him. He stood up, and Barnaby trotted off to rejoin his friends, his tail wagging like a flag of victory. "Brittany, look at this," he said, gesturing to a grove of trees nearby. I saw a woman sitting on a bench made of living wood. She was surrounded by cats, dozens of them. Some were on her lap, some were on her shoulders, and others were curled around her feet. She was talking to them, and I could tell they were responding, not with meows, but with a deep, soulful understanding. "That is Martha," Jesus explained. "She spent her life on earth as a cat lady. The world mocked her. They called her lonely and strange. They didn't see that she was doing my work, taking in the ones that others had discarded. She saw the light in them when no one else would. Now she is surrounded by the souls she saved. They are her family. Every ounce of love she poured into them has been returned to her 1,000-fold. As I watched Martha, I saw a familiar shape. A small, scruffy terrier with a crooked tail jumped onto the bench next to her. It was Jack, the dog I had lost when I was 20. I gasped, my hand going to my mouth. "Jack!" I called out. Jack's ears perked up. He looked in our direction, and his whole body began to wiggle with excitement. He didn't run to me yet, but he looked at Jesus as if asking for permission. Jesus nodded with a smile, and Jack took off like a shot. He reached me in seconds, jumping into my arms. He felt real. His fur was soft, his body was warm, and he smelled like sunshine and clean earth. I buried my face in his neck, crying tears of sheer, unadulterated happiness. I could feel his heart beating against mine, a steady, rhythmic proof that he was alive, truly alive. "He has been waiting for you," Jesus said, his voice thick with a gentle compassion. "But he hasn't been lonely. Time here is not like time there. For him, it has been a glorious afternoon of play. He knows you are coming, and he knows that when you arrive, you will never have to say goodbye again." I held Jack for a long time, feeling the weight of him, a weight I had missed for over a decade. I looked at Jesus through my tears. How is this possible? How can a love so simple be so eternal? He sat down on the grass, inviting me to sit beside him. Jack curled up in the space between us, his head resting on my knee. Love is the only thing that survives the crossing, Jesus said. When you love a creature, you are not just interacting with a physical body. You are connecting with the spark of life I placed within them. That connection creates a bond, a tether of light that cannot be broken by death. Death is just a wall, but love is the door through that wall. Because I live, they live also. Because I love them, they are part of the eternal kingdom. He then showed me a vision that was more intense than the others. I saw the world as it is now, but seen through his eyes. I saw the invisible threads of light that connect every human to the animals they care for. I saw a woman in a hospital bed, holding the hand of her service dog. I saw a soldier in a lonely outpost, sharing his rations with a stray pup. I saw a child in a crowded city, feeding crumbs to the pigeons. Every one of these acts of kindness lit up like a star on a map. I saw that the animals weren't just pets, they were anchors. They were keeping the world from drifting into total darkness. Their presence was a constant reminder of innocence and pure, uncomplicated devotion. When a person loses a companion, he said, they feel a hole in their soul. That is because a part of their heart has traveled ahead of them into this place. It isn't a loss, it's a deposit. They are building a home here, one wag and one purr at a time. I looked down at Jack, who was now fast asleep on my knee. He looked so peaceful. I thought of Buster, back home, probably sitting by the window, wondering where I was. Is Buster okay? I asked. Does he know I'm safe? Jesus smiled, and I saw a vision of my living room. Buster was sitting on the back of the sofa, looking out at the rain. But he didn't look distressed. He looked like he was listening to something. Then I saw a soft, golden light. A faint shimmer of Jesus' presence brush against Buster's ears. Buster blinked, let out a long, contented sigh, and began to groom his paw. He knows, Jesus whispered. I have told his heart that you are with me. He feels your love even now, across the veil. There is no distance in the spirit, Brittany. You and he are still connected by the same thread of light that brought you together. We stood up, and Jack stayed by the grove, playing with a group of other small dogs. I knew I had to move on, that there was more about Fenty. He wanted to show me before I had to return. As we walked, the landscape shifted again. We were standing on the edge of a great canyon, but instead of rock, the walls were made of shimmering crystal. Below us, I saw a forest of trees with leaves that changed color with the music in the air. I saw a group of horses running through the canyon floor. They were magnificent. Some were white as snow, others black as midnight, their coats gleaming with an inner light. They moved with a freedom that I had never seen on earth. There were no saddles, no bits, no fences. They ran for the sheer joy of movement. These are the ones who were broken by work or by sport, Jesus said, his voice carrying a touch of that divine sorrow I had felt before. The ones whose spirits were crushed by the demands of men. Here, I have given them back their wildness. I have healed their legs and their hearts. They run now for me and for the joy of the wind. I watched as one of the horses, a beautiful bay with a star on its forehead, looked up at us. It stopped its run and bowed its head toward Jesus in a gesture of profound respect. It was a silent acknowledgement of the one who had set it free. They know their shepherd, he said. Every creature, from the smallest insect to the greatest beast, recognizes the one who gave them breath. They do not have the doubts that humans have. They do not struggle with faith. They simply exist in the truth of my love. I looked at the vastness of it all, the millions of animals, the endless beauty, the perfect peace. I felt so small, yet so incredibly significant. Why did you show me all this? I asked. Why me? He turned to me, and his amber eyes seemed to pull me into a depth of love I couldn't even describe. Because you asked with a pure heart, Brittany, and because the world has become a cold place for many of my creatures. I need messengers. I need people who can look into the eyes of a dog or a cat and see the eternal soul within. I need you to go back and tell the ones who are grieving that their love was not in vain. He reached out and touched a nearby flower. It didn't just bend. It seemed to lean toward him, absorbing his light. "There is a vision I must show you now," he said, his expression becoming more serious. "It is the vision of the bridge between worlds." The ground beneath us seemed to dissolve into a bridge of light that stretched across a vast, starlit void. I saw people walking across it, leaving the gray world behind and entering the gold. And as each person crossed, they were met by a parade of animals. It wasn't just one or two. It was every animal they had ever shown kindness to. I saw a man who had been a gardener, and as he crossed, he was surrounded by thousands of birds and butterflies, their wings creating a whirlwind of color. I saw a woman who had worked at a shelter, and she was nearly knocked over by a tidal wave of wagging tails and happy barks. "The reunion is not just with people," Jesus said. "It is with every spark of life you nurtured. This is the reward for the compassionate. This is the harvest of the seeds of love you sowed in the soil of the earth." The vision intensified. I saw the threads of light connecting the humans and animals turning into solid cords of gold. They weren't just following each other. They were part of each other. "The soul of a man and the soul of his companion are woven together," he explained. "When you bring an animal into your heart, you are changing your eternal geography. You are creating a space that only they can fill." I felt a sudden, sharp tug in my chest, a reminder of the world I had left behind. The light around us began to shimmer with a different frequency. I knew our time was growing short, but there was still a deep peace in my heart that I knew I would carry back with me. "Wait," I said, reaching out toward the vision of the bridge. "There's so much pain back there. So many people feel like they've lost everything when they lose their pets. How can I make them understand?" Jesus took my hands in his. His touch was like a healing fire, burning away any last trace of my own doubt. "Tell them that I am the keeper of the fold," he said. "Tell them that when they say goodbye, they are only saying until we meet again. Tell them that I value their tears, for each tear is a testament to the love that I created. And tell them to look for the signs, the small nudges, the warmth in the room, the sudden memory that brings a smile. I am in those moments, and so are their friends." He then showed me one last vision in this part of our journey. I saw a wide golden gate. It wasn't a gate to keep people out, but a gate that stood permanently open. And sitting right in the center of the gateway was a beautiful buff-colored tabby cat with large, intelligent eyes. It was Buster, but a version of Buster that was radiant, his fur glowing like a candle flame. He was waiting. He wasn't impatient. He was simply there, a golden sentinel at the entrance to home. "He will be the one to greet you," Jesus whispered. "When your work is done and it is time for you to come home for good, he will be the first thing you feel against your legs. That is my promise to you." The peace that flowed through me at that moment was so deep I felt like I was floating. The questions were gone. The fear was gone. There was only the light, the love, and the promise of the great reunion. The air around us began to shimmer with a new kind of intensity, like the light was becoming even more solid, more real. I felt like I was standing in the very center of a diamond, with colors reflecting off every surface. Jesus looked at me, and I could tell he wasn't done showing me the wonders of his Father's house. He wanted me to see the full scope of how life, all life, is woven together. "Come," he said, and with a gentle wave of his hand, the scenery shifted again. We were no longer in the fields or by the stream. We were standing in what looked like a vast living library. But instead of books on shelves, there were walls of light that seemed to pulse with memories. I saw thousands of small flickers, like tiny stars, floating in the air. "Every act of kindness toward a creature is recorded here," Jesus explained, reaching out to catch one of the floating sparks. It landed in his palm, and I saw a vision of a young man stopping his car on a busy road to help a turtle cross safely to the other side. "The world would say this was a small thing, a waste of time," he said. "But to me, this was an act of worship. This man recognized the value of the life I created. He saw the breath of life in a creature that most would just drive past. Every time a person provides water for a thirsty bird, or builds a shelter for a stray cat, or simply speaks a kind word to a frightened animal, it resonates here in the heavens." He let the spark go, and it floated back into the wall of light. I realized then that my small acts with Buster, the way I would carefully pick out his favorite treats, the way I would talk to him when I was lonely, weren't just habits. They were threads in a massive, beautiful tapestry of love that God was weaving. I want you to see the true nature of their souls, Jesus said. He touched my eyes, and suddenly the world transformed. I wasn't just seeing the animals as physical beings. I was seeing the light inside them. It was like seeing the world in X-ray, but instead of bones, I saw glowing cores of pure golden energy. I saw a group of elephants in a distant land on Earth. They were mourning a member of their herd who had passed away. Their golden cores were pulsing with a deep, rhythmic sorrow. I could see the threads of light connecting them to one another, and I could see a great warm light descending from above to sit with them in their grief. They feel as you feel, he whispered. They have a capacity for loyalty and grief that often exceeds that of humans. They are not mindless. They are mindful in a way that is quiet and deep. I have given them a different kind of wisdom, one that doesn't rely on logic or words, but on the direct connection to the earth and to me. I saw a vision of a dog in a shelter, sitting at the back of a cold cage. His light was dim, flickering like a candle in a draft. But then a volunteer walked in and spent 5 minutes just sitting with him, stroking his ears. As the human showed love, the dog's light began to flare up, growing brighter and steadier. And remarkably, the human's light grew brighter too. It is a circle of healing, Jesus said. I created them to help heal the brokenness in the human heart. When you give love to an animal, you are actually opening a door for my love to flow into you. They are my messengers of peace, sent into the places where humans are too hurt or too proud to listen to words. We walked through a garden that felt like it was made of pure music. Every flower that bloomed sent out a note, and together they created a song that made my whole being vibrate with joy. In the center of the garden, I saw a young girl named Ava. She had a face that shone with a light I can only describe as heavenly. On Earth, Ava had never been able to speak. She had lived in a world of silence, her thoughts locked inside a body that wouldn't obey her. But here, by a crystal stream that bubbled with laughter, she was sitting with a white rabbit. The rabbit was large and soft, its fur looking like freshly fallen snow. I watched in awe as Ava leaned down and whispered into the rabbit's ear. Her voice was clear, sweet, and full of life. "You are so beautiful," she said. And the rabbit looked up at her, its nose twitching, and I could see the understanding passing between them. It wasn't just that she could talk. It was that they were communicating heart to heart in a language that transcended human speech. The barriers are gone here, Jesus told me. The things that divided the species on Earth, fear, the lack of a common tongue, the struggle for survival, have no place in my kingdom. Here, all of my children speak the language of the Spirit. Nearby, I saw a woman named Emma. She was standing in a wide, open plain that seemed to stretch on forever under a sky of soft gold. A herd of wild horses was galloping toward her. These weren't the broken, weary horses I had seen earlier. These were powerful, majestic beings, their manes flowing like silk in the wind. As they reached Emma, they didn't run past. They slowed to a graceful trot and surrounded her. The lead stallion, a magnificent black horse with eyes like stars, bowed his head in a gesture of deep respect. Emma reached out and placed her hand on his nose, and I saw a flash of light pass between them. In the beginning, Jesus said, man was meant to be the gentle steward of the earth. There was a perfect communion between humans and animals. That communion was fractured when the world fell into shadow. But here, and in the new earth that is coming, that harmony is restored. The wildness is no longer a source of danger, but a source of wonder. I looked at the scene, the girl with the rabbit, the woman with the horses, and I felt a sense of rightness that I had never known. This was how it was always supposed to be. The world thinks they are less because they do not speak with tongues, Jesus said, his amber eyes locked onto mine with a steady, burning truth. But they are the anchors of innocence. In a world full of noise and confusion, they remain pure. To think they would simply cease to exist is to misunderstand the depth of my Father's heart. He is the God of the living, and all that was created in love is restored. I felt the truth of his words sinking into the very center of my soul. It wasn't just a nice thought or a hopeful wish. It was the fundamental law of the universe. Love is eternal, and because God is love, nothing that is loved can ever truly be lost. But Jesus, I said, a sudden thought occurring to me. What about the animals that lived and died millions of years ago? The ones no human ever knew? He smiled, and the light around him seemed to expand. Do you think I would forget even one of them? I was there when the first creature took its first breath in the ancient forests. I saw the beauty of the things that eyes have never seen. In my Father's house, there is room for all. The history of the earth is not just a human story. It is the story of every living soul that has ever graced its surface. They are all gathered here, safe in the palm of my hand. The peace I felt was so absolute that I begged to stay. I didn't want to go back to a world of rain-slicked highways and ICU beds. I wanted to wait for Buster right there in that golden field, under the gaze of those amber eyes. I wanted to spend eternity exploring the wonders he was showing me. But Jesus cupped my face in his hands. His touch was warm, healing things I didn't even know were broken. The old heartaches, the secret fears, the long-held doubts. Your story is not finished, Brittany, he said with a gentle authority that I knew I couldn't resist. There are people who are drowning in grief, believing their companions are gone forever. They sit in empty houses, feeling like the love they shared was just a temporary shadow. You must go back and tell them that the love they feel is a sacred tether. Tell them that I hold every creature in the palm of my hand. I felt the pull of the world again, but this time it was stronger. The golden fields began to fade, replaced by a soft, white mist. Tell them, he said, his voice echoing in the growing distance, that I am the God who restores. Tell them that the reunion is real, and it is closer than they think. Go now, and be my voice for the ones who have no voice. The light began to pull me away, and the last thing I saw was his radiant smile, promising me that this separation was only for a little while. I felt a sudden, sharp sensation, a gasp of air into lungs that felt heavy and tight. The silence of the heavenly realm was replaced by the steady, rhythmic beeping of machines and the hushed whispers of voices nearby. I felt the weight of my body again, the soreness in my chest, the coldness of the sheets. I opened my eyes, and it took a moment for the world to come into focus. I saw a ceiling of white tiles. I smelled the sharp, sterile scent of a hospital. I was back. I woke up here in this ICU bed today, April 23rd, 2026. It has been 9 days since my heart stopped in that car. The doctors talk about neurological recovery and stable vitals, but they don't understand. They think my brain was just playing tricks on me while it was deprived of oxygen. But I know the difference between a dream and the truth. A dream fades like smoke. The truth burns like a sun. My mother is sitting in the chair next to me, her eyes red from a week of crying. She looks older than she did 9 days ago, her face lined with the exhaustion that goes deeper than sleep. I reached out and took her hand. It felt solid and warm, an anchor to this world. My voice was raspy, and my throat felt like it was filled with sand, but the message was clear. I had to say it. Mom, I whispered. She jumped, her eyes widening as she leaned in close. I saw them. I saw Jack, and I saw him. He told me that Buster's soul is tied to mine forever. I saw the confusion in her eyes, but I also saw a flicker of hope, a tiny spark of the light I had seen in the heavenly fields. I knew I would have to tell the story many times. I knew people would look at me with skepticism or think I was just trying to comfort myself after a trauma. But I also knew there would be people who would hear me, people whose hearts would recognize the truth of what I was saying. I am telling you this now because I know what it's like to look at an empty leash or a favorite sleeping spot and feel a hole in your chest. I'm 32 years old, and I've been given a second chance to say this. Do not let anyone tell you that your pets are just animals. They are soul beings. They are waiting in a light so bright it makes the sun look dim. Jesus is looking after them, and he is looking after you. Trust him with your heart, and trust him with the creatures you love. This life isn't the end. It's just the hallway leading to the great reunion. Please share this with someone who is grieving. Let them know that love never ends, and we will see them all again.